thank you so much for being here. You know, I think that we're all here because of mission, so there is no question that we all have mission. If you look to the right of you, you look to the left, you're gonna find someone who really cares about what they're doing, and that's the beauty of this conference. Let's say right now, today, what we're gonna talk about is the intersection between mission and purpose and working to make a profit or making a profit, and that sustainability between the two and the tension between those two things. I would also say that there's a real spirit in mission, and I wanted to open with a quote from Howard Schultz, which I found really powerful about companies today and the importance of mission. At a time of so much turmoil and uncertainty in our society, when a flood of disinformation causes us to question what is real, when institutions we have held dear seem to be crumbling, and when our trust in each other is fracturing, there is an even greater role and responsibility for our nation's leaders, and this includes business leaders, education leaders, to remain true to their core values. The organizations that endure and thrive in the disruption of today and tomorrow will be those that are not just nimble and innovative, but those that embrace their core purpose and reason for being. So I wanted to begin to just level set. Can each of you tell me about your core purpose, starting with Brandon?
My name is Brandon from Brand Ed, and I'm here to talk about branding. That wasn't going to be my intro, but it was just right there, so I had to do it. Look, I'll just say very simply, I'm 100 days into my new role as CEO of Brand Ed. I spent many years at Kaplan, many years before that at Gallup, and as a founder of a company that was an ed tech company before ed tech was even a name in 2000. And one of the unique experiences I've had over the last 3 organizations is that they've all been family-owned organizations. Brand Ed is family-owned, Kaplan through Graham Holdings, Graham family, publicly traded but family-controlled, and Gallup was family-owned. And I'll just say one of the really special attributes is to be within an organization where multi-generational thinking and legacy and stewardship is a fundamental part of the DNA. I talk a lot about cathedral building in our work. I think a lot of what's been happening in the ed tech space in particular has been very short-term. I'm gonna be critical, short-sighted. It's been designed as an app, not a lasting entity, right? And I'm not trying to sound, hypercritical, because those all serve a purpose, right? But in my world, I've been very interested in cathedral building things that will last, not just for years, but for decades, and potentially, yes, I'm gonna say it's centuries. And I think we need more of that in education. The world's great educational institutions have been around for hundreds of years. And I think some people in this room are building the ones that will be that. And I think there's a very, very different story as we think about mission-driven brand building around how we think about long-term trajectory versus more short-term rewards. So.
Hey everyone, my name's Amir. I'm co-founder and CEO of Outschool. And our mission is to inspire kids to love learning. And we do that by providing tremendous variety and flexibility so that each individual learner can get inspired by whatever subject inspires them. And if they're not getting what they need in school or through traditional mechanisms, they can come to our website and access over 100,000 classes. And we've now served over 1 million learners. And what we envisage is a future where learners all over the world can find exactly the right teacher, exactly the right learning group, the right learning mode at the right time that can really connect their interests with learning. And we envisage a world where we can move away from this model of a single institution being asked to serve all learners, all their needs, this thing we call school, which I think is unrealistic given the tremendous diversity of needs there are in the world, and instead move to an ecosystem and really try and create that ecosystem around the world. And it's become a bit of a cliche in tech, and it invites cynicism to say, but I started this company to change the world. And I'm not going to be satisfied until we can really address some of the core structural issues in education. And that comes with challenges, which we'll talk about on this panel. But that's what we're here to do, and that's a little bit about Outschool.
Very cool. Hi, I'm Shaan, Akbar. I'm co-founder, CEO of Tutored by Teachers. I have to start by saying, as a new kid on the block, I'm incredibly humbled to be on stage with these guys. I mean, they've built tremendous mission-driven brands, and you know, I'm just me. So anyway, Tutored by Teachers, we're motivated by 3 beliefs. 1, that learning is inherently human. 2, that every student, irrespective of background, deserves personalized instruction. And 3, teachers need to get paid a hell of a lot more than they do now. And and so, you know, the way we do that is we partner with schools, typically in underserved communities, and we deliver high-quality, personalized virtual instruction powered by teachers. And we have a community of over 6,000 teachers. They're serving tens of thousands of students, delivering measurable gains, getting them closer to grade level. And we have paid our teachers nearly $20 million to date in our short 3 years as a company. And so we are, you know, I'm excited to learn from this panel and, you know, muck it up here with Amir. So yeah, cool.
Yeah, very cool. I was trying to rack my brain to come up with a poetic intro like Brandon. I couldn't. So I'm Arne, CEO at Babbel. We're a language learning company, digital language learning company. So we work in a, I would say, purposeful and impactful industry. We do something meaningful every day. We're also a purpose-driven organization, and it's not the same thing. And we're also now just short of 1,000 people, so we decided to formalize our purpose and actually give it a statement and make it public a couple of years ago. It's called Creating Mutual Understanding Through Language. Mutual understanding only happens when you actually speak a new language with someone else, with another human being. So to us, it's about more than just interacting with the app, becoming and paying a subscriber. It's really about successful learning outcomes. And we take that very seriously. It's the core of everything we do, and that's why we're also very different to some of the other players you would see in the digital space. Yeah? And we, I think have given our teams quite some guidance with creating that crisp purpose statement, and very happy with it, and it differentiates us in the marketplace.
Okay, so now I have a surprise question. I didn't tell them we were going to ask this. You ready? Yeah. I'm going to answer it for myself. How many of these companies, of all of our companies, are profitable now? And I'm going to not raise my hand because Lovevery is not yet profitable. We are north of 200 million in sales. We've been scaling the business. We have not yet hit a profit. And this is the tension that we're going to talk about around mission and then figuring out how you can become a sustainable, financially sustainable enterprise. So can you raise your hand if you are profitable?
We've had years where we are.
Okay.
Does that count?
Yeah, I mean, it's something. We're hoping to have a quarter this year, last quarter of this year. That's our goal. We're going to try and have one profitable quarter. It's a big moment, but you know, thank you for raising your hand. This is the tension, and so.
I would ask which profit KPI you're talking about, because they're very different.
I'm talking about EBITDA, you know, what the financial markets count as profitable. But yes, good question. Good question. So cash flow positive, profitable.
Yeah, so we've been cash flow positive for 12 years now, I think. And, you know, not looking back, that's increasing. IFRS deferring our subscription revenues, stock-based compensation, all those things, you know, there's still a minus in front of that number. So that's why I'm asking which one are you talking about?
Now we're veering into a different panel. We're not doing an accounting panel. We're not doing a financial analysis panel. We just raised our hand just to kind of get a broad sweep. So Arne, I want to turn to you.
I'll give it a...
Okay, I'll leave it an iffy. Okay, got it. So I want to turn it to you to start. We're going to talk about some examples and storytelling and about the tension between figuring out how you can maintain your mission and when that comes in the face of a question around making money and profit. And you created, Arne, you created a nonprofit project for your company that served Ukrainian refugees. In doing so, you postponed some really important product development that was for-profit businesses that you were building. So you have product and you invest in your product team and usually into the next wave of for-profit product. And instead you diverted those resources admirably to support Ukrainian refugees. Can you talk about the decision? Tell me the story. Tell us how that all played out now.
Yeah, and might be good to start with that was not an easy decision, and also not a unanimous one either. Not in our supervisory board, not in the executive team. We weren't 100%. It came aligned. It came down to a CEO call. So my decision. And in hindsight, I know it was right. In hindsight, I still can't prove it in US dollars or in euro numbers, because the main issue that I faced was the cons, the arguments for not doing it, not offering a free product for Ukrainian refugees to learn, in our case, English, German, or Polish, were all hard numbers, euros, dollars, 100% certain, and the pros were on what I would call the more fuzzy side, on the impact side, on the team engagement side, and that made it really hard to square. If I go back to the decision point, I was looking at just overhead costs, salaries, freelancers, PR agency budget, hosting, etc. Like all of that costs real money. 100% certain, boom, that's a minus, right? Opportunity cost, what would those tech teams be working on? We knew that we wouldn't work on our conversion funnel. We wouldn't work on making the product better for our paying subscribers for at least a number of weeks. So that has a real euro value or dollar value attached to it. 100% certain that we wouldn't get any gains. That was the bigger number, by the way, and that I felt pretty certain I could put my thumb on. There was a third one, which was more in the realm of the team is pretty engaged, pretty bullish, pretty passionate, and they gave us a really short timeline that I don't think anyone in the exec suite was quite sure we would hit. And we didn't know how long the war would last at this time, right? This was literally week one of Russia invading Ukraine. This is 2 years ago, so it could have been a complete waste of time if the war had ended 2 weeks later, right? So we were facing all of these certainties and real dollar values on the minus side. On the pro, I mean, yes, the impact, the purpose, we found a solution to really help Ukrainian refugees, right? These are people who had to leave their homes, make a new home for themselves elsewhere, find a job elsewhere, find schools for their kids elsewhere. So learning that language is a real plus. I can measure that in number of active learners that we serve successfully. We also knew that it would be great for a slightly less easy to measure PR value, employer brand value, the outward image. I also knew that if we did well and if it worked, it would have a massively positive effect for employee engagement. So all of those things were on the plus side. In the end, it really came down to, are we a purpose-driven organization or are we not? Do we do the right thing and do we sacrifice some euro value or in our case euros here, US dollars, for doing the right thing? In hindsight, we're currently serving more than 600,000 Ukrainian refugees. We're learning a language with Babbel. We get really heartwarming stories back every single day about people who found a job, who found love, who found a new home, who had a new family. All of those things that learning a language enables. So on the impact side, I can put a big check mark. We also delivered it faster than we thought we could, even against the ambitious timeline. So now I'm sitting on a really good case for mission-driven product development that we're now learning from and trying to replicate for everything else. So that's a huge enabler. I also haven't had a single job interview, investor conversation, press interview since then where this topic didn't come up. So the image impact, I think, is also clear. Still, having said all of that, I still struggle to put the euros next to the image and the impact values, even speed of hiring and getting better people, like that is really indirect to link to euros or US dollars. And I think it just comes down to the difficulty of measuring purpose or impact in US dollars, which is also why our impact model, the way we measure our impact in the world, is not tied to US dollars. It's not a money comparison, because I think that's just utterly wrong, trying to simplify something that's larger. So yeah, just wanted to share that experience. Not an easy decision. I'm proud of what we did. Totally do it again. Still can't put a euro value on it.
It's very inspiring. It's really inspiring. Amir, you've created a whole foundation and a nonprofit arm with Outschool. Can you tell us more about how that came to be and any tension that you experience now with your nonprofit and your for-profit enterprise? Last question, how can you prove that your nonprofit is truly separate from your for-profit from a authenticity and integrity standpoint?
Yeah, great questions. And I've got team members from the for-profit and non-profit side in the audience. They can keep me honest here. But, the founding of our non-profit arm, it's kind of seared in my memory because this happened right as COVID hit and right as schools were being shut down. Because when we saw the possibility that schools were going to have to shut down physically and move to internet-based teleschooling, which is what the CDC called it at the time, we realized that there was going to be a tremendous impact, that it was likely going to be impossible for schools to move to this online model that fast and be effective. That probably what that meant was that parents with means were going to turn to services like ours because we have more experience with running these small group classes at scale online than compared to any other organization in the US. And that would be great for them, but what that was going to mean is that so many families without the means were going to be stuck. And they're going to be desperate and risk being left behind with that change. And it had always been on my mind that we should have a nonprofit arm because our mission I consider to be bigger than just our organization, the for-profit organization. And we elected at that moment to say, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to give away our classes for free. We're going to set up and fund a nonprofit to administer that program. And we're going to try and get additional funding in order to be able to try and create this buffer to this emergency. And we ended up launching Outschool.org within 1 week. And we launched it on Friday, March 13th, 2020. We didn't know that was the day that it was going to be announced that schools were going to shut down, but it was. And we'd funded it with an initial $50,000 from our company, and then Zoom had also contributed to it. And we burnt through that money by 2 a.m. on the Saturday. And it turned out that teachers in schools were telling people, they'd seen that we were offering this free class, they're telling their parents to go and sign up for them. And then, so we loaded up the fund with a few $100,000 more. And then desperately worked through the weekend as we saw the burn down rate of that. We're going to run out of money by Monday. So then I started emailing angel investors and the fantastic folks over at Reach Capital donated personally, people from USV, Paul Graham, just anyone kind of rich that I know to donate, because I was also worried we're using company cash and we were a lot earlier stage. We hadn't raised all the money that we've raised since. But what happened, and this is actually a case of the mission and impact piece actually being quite aligned with the business. Because through all of this, our brand was getting out there, and a lot of people were coming to our website and paying if they didn't meet the criteria that we'd set for the nonprofit. So our business was going up like a rocket ship. Our spend on the nonprofit arm was also going up, but at some point quite quickly, we realized we were now capable of putting a lot more money into that nonprofit to fund those free classes and attract kind of larger donors who are interested in supporting those underprivileged families. I think, and I'm very proud of the work we did there. I think that's a good example of that. Under some circumstances, there can be this really, really good match. Now, I'm proud to also say that past that emergency situation, Outschool.org has found a purpose. and is a separate non-profit organization to Outschool, bluntly, the friction comes. I'd love to be able to justify funding them more, and I've done so personally. But it comes back to what you were saying, Arne, is like, how can you justify that from a for-profit perspective, especially then in an environment where market conditions have changed and cycles have changed, and funding markets are different, and we need to be efficient. And so that's where I see the core challenge. And the question I have is, in that emergency situation, there was a very clear synergy between the initiatives. It's not clear to me that's always the case. So I think picking and choosing the times to do things like that is critically important. And it can't be all the time. And I think one of the hardest things about this for me is saying no to many mission-aligned and impact-oriented initiatives, of which there are many that fit into our very broad mission. And that's where tension really lies.
I was actually asking myself that question, like, would it still work if you picked up the phone this weekend and said, hey, Paul Graham, do you want to put $500,000 into this weekend? Like, is the timing that important?
Well, I mean, I think it actually is from a donor perspective as well. Because remember, like, they were watching the news, same as everyone else, going, it was, I think that made it easier from a donor perspective. There was less resistance there was no resistance from financial investors. Was like, yeah, whatever it takes to keep the lights on. And, they're worrying about their own family, not rather than worrying about kind of costs. And so I think those situations can potentially bring out the best in people, and we saw that in elements of the pandemic as well as kind of terrible behaviors as well, unfortunately. But I don't think we've yet found the long-term model to balance this. I'd love to hear if other panelists have.
Shaan, talk to us.
Yeah. So I think that there's a challenge with there's a few challenges, right, with nonprofit and foundations, and there's a sustainability question. And there are poles. There are two poles, right? There's nonprofit, which is focused on service delivery and quality, and then there's SaaS, and that's focused on scale, but not necessarily service quality, right? And so you have to figure out how to build systems and that build a virtuous cycle that that allow for profit and purpose to be just in sync. And so early days for us, we started as a D2C. We were doing a very similar thing. And then we fell into school sales. We had a community of virtual teachers. We were doing pods the summer of 2020. Amir had raised $100 million, and it was a perfect time to exit D2C. But we realized that there was this, schools needed credentialed teachers who could teach virtually, and we had it. And we were able to plug them into the school day, and the schools had budget. And that's the big challenge with education in general. Who's going to pay? And but the truth is, and that's why everyone goes to higher ed or pre-K, because there's a lot of private dollars there. But like in education in K-12, there is money as long as you're delivering. If you're hitting a core need, and you're doing it with fidelity, and that is fundamentally what we're doing. And we've set up a system where basically we have the most aggressive pay policies of any tutoring company, and there's a lot of them after Esser, but we have the most. We pay $40 an hour, and we don't nickel and dime on the millisecond or any of that, and paying and so we pay the most, we get the best teachers. Only 8% of teachers who apply to our community get in, and then they drive the best outcomes, and then schools want more of us, and they retain us, and they allocate more budget for us. We've grown at a 300% CAGR over the last 3 years, and we turned profitable back half of last year, and we've been profitable every month since. And it's all about that virtuous cycle. Just like if you just invest, this fucking capitalist system. If you just invest in if you just invest in the services and you align incentives, you'll get good outcomes and you'll get profit.
Yeah, build on this point, right? The lines between tax status are blurring greatly. They have been for a long time. I was a student of public policy. I remember talking about multi-sector public policy, right? We think about 3 types of organizations: businesses, nonprofit organizations, and then government. Government is about policy shaping, right? And nonprofit is about service and mission and business about making money. You look at the great organizations around the world, they're playing a role in all three, right? The great organizations of the world are generating self-sustaining revenue. There's another way to think about it. You're a nonprofit. I'm sorry, if you're a successful nonprofit, you have found ways to generate self-sustaining, consistent revenue, just like a business has to, hopefully a profitable business, right? I think a lot of our organizations in this conference are heavily involved in shaping education policy. We're contributing ideas frequently to that, right? We're introducing new products and innovations that enable new policy to be shaped, and we're certainly contributing to mission-driven cause. I also think about it from another angle. Some of the most expensive educational programs in the world right now are delivered by nonprofit organizations. You all saw the article a couple weeks ago that universities in the United States are getting close to $100,000 a year total price points. Those are all nonprofit institutions. They are literally delivering the most expensive educational programs in the world. The president of Penn left with a $23 million payout. We have college, football coaches and basketball coaches who are literally getting fired and leaving with tens of millions of dollars in severance. Like, I really think it's a silly distinction now, right? And so to get to what you're talking about, if this is all aligned, if you're delivering on a fundamental value proposition, you will be successful, regardless of tax status. But I'm getting tired of the distinctions because I see what I think of as violations of a nonprofit on the behalf of nonprofits. Certainly happening on the corporate side of things. But I mean, when you're charging $100,000 a year, I don't think that's a nonprofit anymore. I'm sorry. By the way, here's another quick stat for you. By 2040, the total endowment value of the Ivy League is going to be $1 trillion. That's the projected by 2040, right? That is astronomical wealth and resources, and they're all nonprofit organizations, right?
Just like 3 out of 4 of us, nonprofits. No. Not profitable, not yet profitable.
I like that.
For profit, but kind of nonprofit, trying to do good. It's all just...
I tell you, I'm going to amend my answer. I'm 100 days into my job. I haven't hit my first year yet, so hold tight, right? Because that... Yeah. So it's an unofficial record, so... Thank you.
Brendan, that was really dynamic. I loved every minute of that.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is, how do we think about, I'm going to pivot it now to just something a little internal, a little storytelling from Lovevery, and about teams, and about people that work for our companies that believe so deeply in our mission. So at Lovevery, we are trying to figure out, again, how to get profitable. We have a product-based, so we offer toys and information to parents at each stage from birth to age 5. And we have a beautiful parent community. We built the product based on what we would want our children to think about when they're inheriting the planet. So not only do we have educational values, but we also build our products with sustainably harvested wood, organic cotton. We pioneer bio-based plastics. We produce in a solar-powered factory in China. It's remarkable. At the largest producer of sustainably harvested wood in the world. So I love talking about this. I co-founded a nonprofit on climate before co-founding Lovevery, in between my first company and my second company. And we're looking at the numbers, and we're trying to figure out, we gotta get our margin to a better place. And we don't wanna cut the product. We don't wanna cut the experience that the child is having with the toys. And so we start looking. And we have organic cotton in all of our products. So anytime we use cotton, we use organic cotton. And the production runs, the market for organic cotton is not big. And so the production runs are really high. It costs the factories a lot to produce with organic cotton because there really isn't a great global standard. It's another question. So we ran a survey and we're like, how much do our customers really value the organic cotton in our products? And it turns out they don't really care. And so we're pouring in this money. And if you're a customer of Lovevery, I hope you're, let me know if you disagree. I can't really change my mind at this point, but I want to talk to you. I want to hear about it. So we've decided to do is keep organic cotton in the baby year because that's when babies are mouthing things the most. But for 2, 3, 1, 4-year-olds, we're shifting to non-organic cotton. Now that may not seem like a big deal, but it is going to save us multiple millions of dollars. And this helps us in our path to sustainability. So the customers don't really notice or care, but what about our employees? they're the ones that are changing they're the ones that are working on this change internally. They're like now going out to suppliers, getting cost bids, organic versus non-organic. You know, does Lovevery really care about sustainability? Do they really, what about this founder that says that she cares? This, you know, the co-founders say they care about sustainability. I don't know if I believe them anymore. And not understanding all the nuances of what goes into building a company, that's so painful and hard to communicate the rub. You know, the challenge, that edge between mission and profit. So I wondered, I think, Amir, you talked about bringing up this point about employee perception of various initiatives and what you maybe say no to. And it might be fine from your customer base, might be fine for your investors. Do you have any examples of what that's like for communicating that to employees and that tension that you might experience internally?
Yeah, and I'm going to introduce some spice here for all of us, including my team members, but really for all of us. And I say this with love, but I think that in education technology, it can be attract people who are obviously very impact driven and want to do good. But in general, I think we're all a little bit too satisfied with doing good at a small scale, and sometimes are reluctant to make the hard choices to increase the impact. Because it's great that today we serve like 100,000 active learners each week. Wonderful, but there's 1.3 billion learners in the world. And so, yeah, to me, the tension is between kind of like now and the future. What's the missed opportunity by us being kind of less, frankly, aggressive and hard-nosed about the acceleration and the speed of getting that? And you need to make trade-offs when making product decisions and when building a business. And we overextended ourselves at one point in 2020 and 2021. We expanded the team rapidly. We kicked off a bunch of new initiatives, many of them like absolutely fantastic that I was really passionate about and that team members were really passionate about. And one in particular was enabling learners to directly, like parents just load the credit card funds and learners themselves would pick the classes, not their parents. Very in line of our mission with inspiring autonomy, but it wasn't delivering short-term results. It was a long-term play. And then when it came time that we needed to focus and accelerate execution, that was one of the projects that we had to shut down. And that doesn't mean we're not going to get there. It doesn't mean we're not going to do it in the future. But it's tough. It's tough having those conversations. It can sometimes be a lack of understanding of, oh, if it's in line with our mission, why are we pulling back? And we definitely haven't got like a magic wand that can solve the communication challenges. But I think one thing that has really helped is, Kapil, our CFO, just being very transparent about the numbers and where we stand with respect to profitability, and continuing to reiterate the message that being profitable and growing fast is absolutely in line with our mission. Like, how are we going to have the impact that we have unless we're growing fast? Because there's so many kids we're not able to help right now. And how can we be sustainable if we can't make a profit? And yeah, trade-offs don't mean not ever. It just means not now, and we can't do everything at once.
It's very helpful. Anybody else?
Yeah, and I think we have to realize that no matter how big the company is and how awesome you think you are, you're not going to be able to solve all the world's problems from one company alone, right? So when we created our purpose, the purpose statement, like the problem was not to land on a statement that everyone would fall in love with and use as guidance. The problem was to actually accept that would be used to say no to things. Like when we landed on creating mutual understanding through language, we started saying no to, let's take environmental topics, ecological topics, right? Yes, we report on the E in ESG, and yes, we report on our carbon footprint, and we only source locally, and we're 100% renewables funded, like energy driven. Yes, but I don't expect any team to spend time on it. I don't approve any activities that cost money or time on it, and it's not part of our impact initiatives, and that hurts. That hurts our teams, and I think what Amir said is right. As a purpose-driven organization, you attract a certain type of talent, whether you like it or not. I think it's amazing. I prefer working in education over any of the other things I used to do, but it comes with downsides. It comes with a very, I would not even say purpose-driven, but more value and ethics-driven culture and type of talent pool. So you actually have to communicate about why we don't do more in ecological topics. I have to talk about why we're not going to donate to, I don't know, Black Lives Matters or any other really valuable cause that 200 NGOs out there are trying to tackle successfully or not. So I think that's the struggle, and there's a downside to it, right? There's pros to it, but there's also a downside to it.
Brandon, you've been in the job for, you said, 5 months, 4 months?
Oh, who's counting? I said 100 days, but we can
100
round
days.
up or down.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
it's all good.
That's math. Okay.
And I do care about your cotton, by the way.
Oh, you do? Okay. So you want it organic? Yes. Okay, okay. For your toddlers. Got it. Okay.
They're not toddlers anymore, but
Okay,
they used to be.
Okay.
Funny how fast this.
I'm wondering if you've said no to anything. You show up, you can see all of the initiatives. What are you saying no to? Is there any tension? Anything around mission and purpose where you have to say, we're not doing this?
Look, I'll just briefly say that there's as much on the drawing board about what we will stop doing as there is new things that we will shift towards, right? That is certainly part of the case. I think one of the points I wanted to leave this group with on mission-driven brand is, because I think it relates to most, if not all, of the organizations here. And it's this notion of stewardship. And I'll say, first of all, no one really knows Brand Ed. It's not a brand-forward company, despite the name, right? We operate Sotheby's Institute of Art, Condé Nast College of Fashion, School of the New York Times, and City Football Leadership, which is Manchester City football, for any of you who are football fans. The collective years of those 4 brands is 750 years of brand building stewardship. We're an organization behind those organizations. We're not a well-known brand in and of ourselves, but we are stewards of world-renowned brands. Any of you who are a partner to Arizona State or Harvard or you name it, right? Think of all the educational institutions that this ecosystem serves. You are part of that stewardship, right? You are part of the stewardship of an individual student's career trajectory. And it's just a prompt to say that that's a big part of mission brand building, is to think about stewardship. It's not always the stewardship of your own brand. You can be a silent or very quiet partner, as many educational institutions are, the organizations here, and still very much be part of that bigger stewardship, cathedral building type of framework. So I wanted to make sure I said that as encouragement, I think, to this entire ed tech community.
That's a perfect segue into where I think we want to close. Shaan, can you tell us any advice that you'd have to someone here? Let's imagine that somebody here has a dream to build a mission-oriented company like you have done. What advice do you have for them in a minute or less?
You had to put the minute or less in there?
Sorry, I've got the orange light happening.
How gray my beard is. I think the key piece of advice I have is to stay nimble, and you have to go slow to go fast, and you have to consolidate, and you can't overbake your product. You have to maintain fidelity to your customer, and you have to stay nimble to adjust that customer's need over time, and to be able to cut back or to be able to accelerate. And you see a lot of teams, like, there's a lot of pressure to grow fast, right? And people take on venture funding, and then there's a ton of pressure. You have rocket fuel, you have to go. You have a lot of pressure to go fast. You're pre-revenue, you're a 100-person team. Holy cow. So stay, right? That's a lot of people right now. And so you gotta stay nimble, go slow, and consolidate. And I promise you will go faster that way.
I'll maybe try to give a bit of advice to the investor folks in the room, or the people who are trying to take on venture capital funding. I think you need to embrace the trade-offs that we discussed today, and really embrace them hard. Because one of the things I've noticed as I've talked to the investor universe over the last 4.5 years as CEO of Babbel, there's a bit of, I'm actually sick and tired of the hypocrisy of saying, I have an IRR target, and I also have an impact ROI target for you. That's great, we're impact investors. And then I keep on asking, like, how does that IRR target actually compare to the IRR you expect from your tech growth digital fund? And I would say 90+% of the time, the answer is the same. Like, in which world is that logical? After we've just discussed how it takes management time, how it distracts the organization, how you get pros and cons from being a purpose-driven organization or in a purpose-driven world like education, it's not going to happen. Like, stop the hypocrisy, my friends, and embrace the fact that it's going to be slightly less. I do think there is profitability and great IRR in education and education technology. It's not going to be as much as every other SaaS company out there. I'm sorry.
All right, Amir, close this out. Some words of inspiration.
I'll share some advice for those of you thinking of setting up new initiatives or companies or non-profits with a purpose. I would say make sure it's your purpose. Because it's one thing to want to do good, but why you? What does it mean for you? I think organizations your organization will be much better served by if you are genuinely, personally invested and connected with it. And I think of it as like founder market product fit. What's your fit with it? What's your story? Why are you doing it? And that introspection, as well as ideation, I think is extremely important at the earlier stages of projects. Because it's hard starting something, very hard, and it's hard to scale it. And if you don't have that fit, or you discover that fit goes away over time, you're going to struggle when the times get hard, and they will. And I think the other thing I'll say is be careful what you wish for. It comes with personal trade-offs. If you really care about what you're doing, it's hard to switch off. It's hard to switch off anyway when founding something new. But if you really, really care, it can be immensely rewarding, but also immensely challenging.
But still go for it. Do it. It's really important. The work you're doing is really important. Don't be discouraged. We're just giving you a little bit of reality under the hood background. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.